I think paperbacks just offer great comfort and they're so cozy. So I thought I would hop in the trend of doing the booktuber tag that's been going around. I saw Jack Edwards do it, and then I've also seen a few of my mutuals do it as well. No one has tagged me yet, but I will have a few people tagged in the description box who I would love to see hop on this trend. But with that said, let's get started. The first question is, how many books in a series is too many? So for me, I love nothing more than reading a book, getting lost in the world, getting lost in the character's perspective, and then being done with it once the book is done. I'm not really one to read series, but if I did read a series, I think the most for me would be a good trilogy. I think trilogies are the perfect, it's like holy number 3 to kind of resolve the plot and show like character development without losing the plot. At this time, I'm not a series person. I'm a single standalone book type of girl, and that's it. Cliffhangers, yes or no? This one I feel 50-50 on. I feel like a good cliffhanger could make sense if it were a series and if it'll be resolved, but I think it's a little more annoying if that is the only book the author intends to put out. I also think that a cliffhanger should either be reserved for an unreliable narrator, and like, are we ever going to get resolution from it? I think of The Guest by Emma Cline. I thought that cliffhanger was very, very great because the entire time our protagonist is just basically lost and kind of finagling her way into certain situations, into people's houses, and like for her own betterment. I feel like it kind of makes sense for me and it's on a book by book case or basis. But overall, I guess I would say no. I think there should be like some sort of a resolution offered. Hardback or paperback? I am a paperback book girly forever. I just feel like hardcovers are so big, so bulky, so heavy. I feel like I'm getting tendinitis in my wrists from holding them. I think paperbacks just offer great comfort and they're so cozy, and like, I love a good floppy book. Like, there's something beautiful about a floppy book. There's something beautiful about opening up a book and it kind of stays like this without you having to push it down, you know? So I'm gonna always say paperback. What is your favorite book? This is a bit of a challenge because I think I have favorite books based on the type of era I am in my life. But I guess I'll keep it closer to when I started reading books again after college and started creating bookish content. I think the book that really got me excited and back into reading as an adult is definitely Unearthed, Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. I think about this book all of the time and I feel like it's just such a beautiful, heartbreaking story, such poetic writing. I feel like if there should be a template or outline of the types of books I like reading, this is definitely the blueprint. So I would have to say Unearthed, Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. My least favorite book. This one I have a hard time because I don't think I really have a least favorite book. So I'll spin this in a way of a book that I finished reading, kind of loved, kind of hated. Let me try to get it right now. So that book for me was The List, and here's why. So I love certain aspects of this book. I thought that it was a very good premise and an interesting premise. However, the delivery, so like movie-like, I don't know, I feel like I could see that this book was written in a way that should be adapted to like a TV show. A drama, there was a lot happening here, and it felt as though when I was reading, I didn't really get to see the two main characters in love. I just kind of met them on the brink of their wedding. They're like out for one night having a good time, and then the rest of the book they're either not speaking to each other or trying to work through the situation that they're in. And what this book is, a Black couple, they're like a darling couple. One is a feminist writer. She talks a lot about like the patriarchy and going against it. And then the man is a podcaster, he was a podcaster, and he starts working for like this media corporation. His name becomes on a list of people who abuse their power, mistreated women. And so our girl main character is very conflicted because of course they're getting married, and what does that do for her public image, for his public image? And then yeah, I don't know, it was like a roller coaster, a little too much happening for me, but I still finished it. I didn't love it and I didn't like hate it, but a part of me read some pieces of it, if that makes sense. Love triangles, yes or no? Oh, I'm not gonna lie, there's nothing more that I love than a good love triangle, okay? When it's done right. And it can't be dragged out. I don't know. There needs to be a good balance. The writing needs to be there. The angst needs to be there. The turmoil needs to be there. I feel like it sets up a good internal conflict within whoever is at the center of the love triangle. I think it's interesting. Of course, I'm always going to root for one person for our protagonist to be with. So I think they're fun. I'm not against them. I love a good messy book when it's done right. So yeah, I'm all for love triangles. A book you couldn't finish. A book that I could not finish recently was Rouge by Mona Awad, which I'm so sad because I loved All's Well. Although that book also took me a while to read now that I think about it. Rouge, I didn't feel as connected and grounded in the story and to the main character Belle as I did in All's Well. And based on that, I found it increasingly hard to like find something within the narrative to hold on to as I continued reading, and like her mental state and her reliability became worse and worse. Like, it was such an interesting premise, and I loved the prologue to this. I thought it was haunting and interesting, but she started losing me when she started having these like fever dreams centering Tom Cruise. And this is just something that I'm noticing about myself. I don't really think I like books that reference celebrities or pop culture that much. Like, I didn't finish this. I DNF'd it. I got to page like 120, and then I just said, I can't do this anymore. Like, this was like the only book that I read in January. I was trying to hold on and I couldn't DNF. It's absurd. Just DNF a book, guys. Seriously, just DNF. DNF a book. I DNF'd this book, and then now I've read like 2 books since I DNF'd this one. It was just taking up rent in my mind. And it didn't deserve it. It didn't deserve to live there. Like, the bills were past due, you know? So next is asking for my current read, and that is Annie John by Jamaica Kincaid. I love this book so far. I think it should be on everyone's coming of age must read list. It's so good. It's about Annie John. She's 10 years old when we first began reading, and then we see her go through adolescence, enter the first stages of adolescence when she turns 12 years old, what that's like for her, but more specifically what that does to her relationship to her mother. There is a quote in here that I think accurately captures kind of that changed desire of Annie John to be within her mother's shadow, but then her mom kind of saying, hey, you need to become your own woman, gain your own identity. And then Annie John starts feeling okay with that. So it says, you just cannot go around the rest of your life looking like a little me. And Jamaica Kincaid's writing is so unputdownable. It just flows. And once you're reading, you're just not going to want to put this down. Last book I recommended to someone. This is hard because I recommend a lot of books to a lot of people, but the last book that I talked about and recommended was Annie John, and I did so on my TikTok, so I guess this one counts for both. Oldest book you've read. So this is pretty interesting. I'm not a classics girly. The first 2 books that are coming to my mind for the oldest that I've read would probably be Letters to a Young Poet by Rilke, and he is just responding to a poet who he is mentoring, giving him advice on creating, on love, on solitude. And then also Shakespeare, any Shakespeare, probably the oldest pieces of literature I've read. So yes, I love Shakespeare. My favorite play is Macbeth. And I loved the recent adaptation of Macbeth that starred Denzel Washington. I thought it was so good. So read it. Not read it, watch it. Watch it and read it if you haven't done so yet. Newest book you've read. I think the newest book I've read, the most recent release, would be Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. And wow, was this a ride. I also cannot put this down. I was so into the story and into how much of a bad person our main character is, our narrator is. So Yellowface follows a white main character. She's best friends with like an Asian literary darling. She has received so much success at such a young age, and our main character hates on her for it, and she feels as though her friend has had this much success because of her cultural background and the stories that she writes, which focus on her culture and how the literary publishing world is favoring diverse stories. So she feels like she's at a disadvantage. Ultimately, the story was about how absurd that take is. Favorite author. Who is my favorite author? I have a few. I'll just talk about two of them. So the first one being Toni Morrison. I love Toni Morrison. I think she is a literal genius, and this is not an original thought. Like, she's won the Pulitzer before. I just love her stories. I feel like they speak to me on such a personal level, and in terms of her writing and her craft, it's beautiful. She always has sentences, and she uses similes in such a profound way because they always are at like the end of a sentence, and they just kind of knock you back and put you into that character's perspective. My favorite book from her, I think, is Sula, but I've loved everything that I've ever read from Toni Morrison. And then my other favorite author is Elena Ferrante. I love Elena Ferrante. I've read a few of her books at this point. My favorite being, I think, of course, My Brilliant Friend, but I think a book that really shows Elena Ferrante's craft and her tendency to take a trope and turn it onto its head, or to kind of highlight that duality of both the beautiful aspects of being a human and then the more sinister, the more ugly pieces, would be The Lost Daughter. I think about that book all of the time. I absolutely loved it. I have it here. I love this book. I made notes and I just got lost in the story, and I also loved the film adaptation that came out recently. It's one of Elena Ferrante's more subtle books, but I think it's very, very layered and goes into detail about mother-daughter relationships. So I loved it. Buying or borrowing books. So I am definitely one for buying books, and that's really because I feel like to really get into the story, I love making notes in the margins. I write in a lot of my books, so if I'm borrowing a book, I feel like I can't do that. Of course I can't do that. And I'm not really one to keep a reading journal. I think just like having my notes in the text works out the best for me. It feels a little more my style. Although I have kept a reading journal, but I've been very, very inconsistent with it. I want to say I started it in 2021, and it's been a few years, and I haven't written complete reviews, or I haven't filled it out yet. It's the same reading journal. But like I said, I just always kind of go to annotating in the book. That's more of my style. A book everyone liked and you didn't. That for me is Normal People. And here's why. I feel like I read Normal People at a time where it was so hyped up. Everyone was talking about how the book changed their life, how it made them cry. And then I read it and I was like, this is okay. Like, I just thought it was okay. And I think it's because it was so hyped up. I had such high expectations that I thought it would be a book that I read and it would change my life. And I thought it was interesting. I read it to the end, but I think I gave it like 2.5 out of 5 stars. It just was not for me. I've heard brilliant analysis of like its discussions on class and relationships and miscommunication because of that, but I thought that the show was better. I think it worked better for me in a show format as opposed to the novel. Bookmark or dog ear? I am one dog earring type of girl, okay? If you pull any of these books up from the shelf, I'll pull this book. Oh, of course, I pull one I didn't dog ear that much. For instance, I dog ear so much. I'm not a tabs person at all. Oh, wait, I think it's asking me to keep my place. I use a bookmark to keep my place, but in terms of annotating, I don't use tabs, I dog ear. I love dog earing a book. It feels more loved and more worn in that way, in my opinion. Book you've reread the most? I haven't really reread a book the most, but I think my most reread author or writer in general is Mary Oliver. I love her, literally love her so much. I've read, I think, like 8 of her books at this point in time, and I always reread an essay in Upstream, and the essay is called On Power and Time, and it was just an essay that I felt like she was speaking to me. I'm sorry, it's Of Power and Time. She was speaking to me personally, and I just really appreciated the insight that she shared in that. So I would say Mary Oliver, any of her books, any of her poems. Definitely Dreamwork as well. I've reread that a few times, and I have a few of the poems memorized from there. So Mary Oliver is my girl. I love her. I think that she just speaks to me and to what I believe life to be in such an honest way. Music while reading? Absolutely not. I do not like to listen to music while I read. What happens to me is if I know the music, I'll start like zoning out and listening to the music, and I'll start like singing the song. I do like white noise though, and that could be anything. So I could read in a cafe with no headphones and people are talking. I kind of like that a little more than listening to music while reading. I know some people are really big on creating bookish playlists to match the vibe of their book that they're reading, but that's not me. I do think though I read the best when I have some sort of white noise going on in the background. It just cannot be music. I could do people talking, the sound of an espresso machine, people lowly chatting. Like that totally does not distract me, but music does. One or multiple point of views? Definitely one point of view. I'm a one point of view girl. I like just sitting with the character, getting into their minds, getting into their perspectives, and really going all in and analyzing them and seeing their character development. I am not a big multiple point of view person, but I do think certain stories lend to it, and I do think it enriches certain stories. It's just not my preferred reading. One sitting or multiple days? Multiple days. Multiple days. I just don't have the attention span, unfortunately, to sit down and read a book in one sitting. And for me, it kind of varies. Like if it's a smaller book, of course, then yes, I can probably achieve it in one sitting. But any novel, it's taking me more than one day to read. There's no way. It's taking me a few days. I probably at this point read about a book a week. Just for my reading pace and how I like to read, I need multiple days to read a thing. There's no way I'm doing it in one unless I just absolutely cannot put it down and I have the time. Book you read because of the cover. So a book I've read because of the cover is Mona. I thought of this one instantly, and it's such a pretty cover. And this book follows a Peruvian writer. She is, I think, somewhere in Iceland on a writing trip because she was nominated along with other writers for this prestigious literary award, and during this conference they are going to announce the winner of the award. And basically it follows, it's a bit of a satire, a bit of a fever dream, and it is a commentary on the different writing personalities and the different types of characters you see in writing. They felt like caricatures being represented in the novel. So that was a good book. Not a favorite of mine, but I enjoyed it, and I'm glad I judged a book by its cover, because that one did not lead me wrong. And I'm not gonna lie, okay? I am a bit superficial when it comes to book covers. I will hunt down specific editions of books that I want just because I think the cover is so good. For example, I was just thinking about how I bought this specific edition of Sula by Toni Morrison because I just think it's so pretty. Also, this edition of Beloved, although there's a better one that I saw. And there's a better one of Sula that I saw too. I think I will eventually start collecting editions from my favorite writers. Even if I have a newer book of it, like I have... Why do I have so many Toni Morrisons? It's because I love these covers, but I can't read vintage books. My allergies start squaring up with me, and then they start winning. So I can't have that. I found this book at the thrifts for like $1, and it's brand new. So yeah, I am definitely a book cover type of girl, and I will judge a book based on the cover, and that's that. All right? Sue me. So that's it for this video. I hope that you learned something new about me, or that we agree on some level. If you want to have some discourse in the comments, let me know your thoughts on these questions. Thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It's totally free and it helps out my channel. We're almost at 8,000 subscribers, which is so amazing and so awesome. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye.